Welcome back to this lecture on creating a basic API structure. Today, we will dive into the essentials of setting up RESTful API, which is a crucial skill for any backend developer. In this video, we will create the basic initial structure for our RESTful API. We will set up the folder structure, defining routes, and lay the foundation for handling API requests. By the end of this lecture, you will have a solid starting point for developing a RESTful API. A RESTful API, that is also called representational state transfer, is a way to provide communication between client and server applications using HTTP requests. It enables the creation, reading, updating, and deleting of the resources, often referred as a CRUD operations, making it a standard choice for building scalable and efficient web services. Now that we understand what a RESTful API is, let's start building the basic structure for our API. We will begin by setting up the folder layout and defining the initial routing configuration. Okay, let's open the backend folder and go to the source folder, and within that I would create controller. So this folder will contain all of the controllers. Every controller will handle the request and response logic, and then we need middleware folder. So we will add custom middleware functions in this folder. Next, we need to create routes folder. So this will contain the routes for your application. Next, we need the services folder. So this will contain the business logic and data manipulation. Now let's create the basic wiring. So in the routes, let's add very basic route for the category. This would not be the complete implementation, but the basic starting point. So we will complete it in the next lectures. Okay. So we just want to create the starting point that would be the base for us to repeat for every table or entity. So in the route, I'm going to create a file called category-routes, or you can call it .routes.ts. Okay. So now we will create a router constant and call the router function from the express. Make sure to import it in this way. Now we will define our endpoints like get, and within the get I will use the endpoint name. I will just keep it empty, and it will call a function get categories, and so far categories function doesn't exist. We have to create it under the controller. So in the controller I will create a new file category.controller.ts. Now here I will export a function with the name get categories is equal to, and we will use async function, and this function will expect the request. Make sure to import the request from the express, and also we will be receiving the response that of type response. Make sure to import this as well from the express. Now we need to return all of the categories. So for that I will create a constant categories is equal to, we will use the category model that we created earlier in the SQLize. So make sure to import that model, and now we have a function find all that will execute this kind of query. Select all from categories. It will generate this category and will execute it behind the scene, and it will finally give us the data back. So as this will be returning the promise, so we have to resolve that by using a wait. You can use a then function as well. Okay, once we get the categories, we can simply use response.json and categories. Okay, save it. Now as this function is defined, we can import it from the controllers. Now there is no error. So in the same way, you can have other kind of endpoints like router.post. For creating the category, you can create a function and export it. That would be add category or create category. Right now it is not created yet, so I will just comment that out. And after that we need to export the router. So for that I will use default router. Okay. Now we need to register this endpoint in the entry point of our Express.js application. For that, open the index.ts, and I'm going to get rid of this hello world endpoint, and now I will use app.use function and within that I will specify the base path for my categories endpoint. That would be slash API slash categories and category routes. Now make sure to import it from this file where we defined the category routes. Okay, earlier we have written the logic to communicate or interact with the database in the controller, but for this type of work we need services. Okay, so let's create a service in the services folder with the name category dash service or category.service.ts. Okay, now I will cut this piece of code and create a function and export it. Export function, and the name would be get all categories. Okay, and paste this line of code and make sure to add the async here. And now we need to import the category model again in this file, and now let's return the categories in this way. Okay, save it. Now in the category.controllers.ts file, instead of writing the logic here, we will simply call the function get all categories from the category.service. So const categories is equal to await get all categories. Make sure to import this function from the service. Okay, so in this way we will keep all of our business logic or database communication inside the services, but controllers will contain only the logic to handle the API requests. We can have other request handling logic like validation and and schema validation, etc. So that can be in the controllers, but all of the other business logic and data communication would stay in the services. Now let me explain one little thing here. We have specified the base path API slash categories, and then we are passing the category routes. And if we go to the category routes, then all of these routes would be available on this base path. So for example, if you want to get all of the categories, you will hit this path API slash categories, and you will use the get method. Okay, so if you do that, then this specific endpoint would be executed and you will get the response. But if you send the request on the same endpoint with the post method, then this specific endpoint would be executed. Also, it is not compulsory that you will just keep it empty. You can add some other piece of text as well here, like XYZ, ABC, whatever. Okay, and now here, if you use that segment in your API request, for example, API slash category slash XYZ slash ABC, and you use the get method here, then this will execute this specific endpoint. Okay, I hope that you get the point. Now let me remove this, and after that we will add middlewares in the future videos, but for now I need to add another important change here. So if you go to the database, go to the connection, here you will see that we are hard coding the database credentials like username, password, etc. This is not the good practice and this is not recommended at all. So what I would recommend is you should use the .env file and put all of your sensitive credentials into there, and then access your credentials from that file and use it wherever you want to use. Okay, after that you must have to put that .env file into the git ignore list, because we never want to commit any sensitive credentials to the git history. Now let's create a file called .env, and I'm going to put all of my credentials here, like db user is equal to root, then db password would be empty for our case, db host would be localhost, and then db port would be this. Also we need to save the port for our application, that would be 3000. In order to use these environment variables, we have to load the environment .env file, and to do that there is a library called .env that is used to load the .env file in your in your application. Okay, now for that let's run the command npm install .env, press enter. That will save it as the dependency in our package.json. And after that, I will go to the index.ts, and on the top, I will import it in this way, import .env from .env. Okay, and then call the function .config from the .env, and make sure to call this function on the very top of this file, so that before any other logic, our environment variables should be available to use. Otherwise, you may face error. So here I will pick the port from the environment variable, and if it was not defined, then I will use the default port here. Okay, now let's go back to the database folder. In the connection file, I'm going to get rid of these hard-coded values, and here I will use process.env dbuser, and then we need for the password, and then same for the database. By the way, we did not add the db name in the .env file, so let's add that as well. Okay, now we need to add same for the host. Okay, we also need to add the port, so we can use process.env.db port, and we will check if we will use it only if it is available, or if it is not available, then we will use a default port here. Okay, so if you hover on this, it is saying that the type is string or undefined, and Sequelize is complaining with the help of the TypeScript that it is saying the string or type number is not assignable to type number or undefined. Okay, so to fix that, you can simply say as any here. After that, we need to add another configuration in the index.ts. We need to add the body parser. So I will install it quickly, and then I will explain what it is and why we need that. So for that, here after creating the app, I will use app.use function. So here we will pass a middleware express.json, call that function. Okay, also we need to add this line of code. So whenever you create your API, you need to add these two lines of code. So let's talk about what the body parser is and why we will need that. Body parser is a middleware for Express that is used to parse the incoming request bodies before your handlers, making it accessible under the request.body properly. It's a key component for handling data sent in the body of an HTTP request, typically from HTML forms or JSON payloads in the REST API. Now the next question is that why do we need the body parser? When users submit the forms on websites, the data sent via POST requests need to be parsed and processed. Body parser simplifies this by parsing the form data and making it available as the JavaScript object. Modern web applications often send data in JSON format, so body parser helps in parsing JSON payloads, making it easier to handle and manipulate the data within your application. It also helps to maintain the simplicity. It abstracts the complexity of parsing various types of request bodies, allowing you to focus on core logic of your application without worrying about the low-level details. By adding the body parser, you ensure your application can access and manipulate data sent in the request body, which is crucial for functionalities like user authentication, data submission, and API endpoints. It also provides a consistent interface for accessing request data across different types of content types like application/JSON or application of type form URL encoded. Body parser helps in validating and sanitizing the input data, which is essential for maintaining the security of your application by preventing common vulnerabilities like injection attacks. It also simplifies the process of reading request bodies, allowing you to write cleaner and more maintainable code. One last important change that you must have to do that I mentioned earlier, you should never commit the .env file. So for that, you have to put it in the .gitignore file. So for that, open the .gitignore and let's put the .env there. Because let me show you the difference. Before it was showing the .env in the changes, it is tracking the .env file, but I don't want that, so I will just put .env in the gitignore, and with that you will notice that .env is not being tracked anymore. All right, I think that's all for this lecture. So congratulations on completing this lecture. You have successfully set up the basic structure of your RESTful API, including the folder structure and initial routing configuration. This foundation is essential for building out more complex functionalities. In the next lecture, we will explore creating specific API endpoints and handling various types of requests. So keep up the great work and see you in the next video.